just wanted to thank you to be here with Andrea, and I just would like to say a few words before he is going to tell us his wine stories. As I told you, Andrea is my cousin. I would say if he was not my cousin, he's like my brother or like my best friend. We have been living many experiences together since the beginning of our times, since we were children. I should say that I met Alex in London almost 25 years ago when I wanted to him to help me in publishing a book on my grandfather, Raimondo Franchetti, who was an explorer. He was called the Italian Lawrence of Arabia. And that's the reason why we met. So it's so nice to be here again because of the Franchetti branch of the family, which is my cousin Andrea. I leave Andrea to tell about his wine, but I would just add something because I could speak about Andrea's life in wine for a couple of hours, even more. And so I need to tell you that he's a man who did break the rules in the Italian wine world. What he did when he decided to produce wine after an adventurous life, he now is considered a wine producer who, in a book I almost finished to write, I consider him the Italian Petrus, because how he began his wine story was exactly how Petrus began in the beginning of last century. Petrus was a vineyard built in the middle of the most greatest chateau of Bordeaux, and which were already there since 300 years. And Andrea founded a vineyard in the middle of an unknown place in Tuscany, and just around the greatest wine of Tuscany, which like 20 minutes from Montalcino, 30 minutes from the noble of Montepulciano, a great famous wine, and 40 minutes from Bolgheri, which is a very famous wine area with wines like Sassicaia, Ornellaia, and so I would love now to listen what Andrea is not a wine producer or a winemaker. Yes, he is also this, but I call him a wine a vigneron, which is a French word which means a man who deals with his vines within his vineyard like a father with his children. He knows all his vines and all. Now I prefer to pass Andrea to tell us something about the wines. Like you, I have with me a glass of his wine because I'm a great lover of his wine. And so thank you very much. And I would love to pass the word to my cousin, Andrea Franchetti.
Thank you, Gerasio.
Good evening. It's
Good evening.
it's a pleasure to be with you all. And Gelasio is always very kind when he introduces me, which he's done many times because we've been in plenty of gatherings together, and he's very, very good at this. I will just say a few words about what happened to me with wine. I just ventured in this. I was 40 years old and I was driving in southern Tuscany on the border with Lazio. I live in Rome. Lazio is the region around Rome. And right on the border, there's this lonesome, huge area, which is a border area between the two regions. One is a Mediterranean region where Rome lies, and one is really a more Germanic mountainy region, which is Tuscany, which is not Mediterranean. It's a completely different culture. And especially the shape of churches and the architecture and the way the houses are distributed in the land is very different. So there's a big jump between the two places, and I sit with my vineyards right on the very border between these two regions, which are worth, especially in that zone, visiting because it's very pristine and you will never be bothered by crowds or towns that are too large, and it's a fantastic way to travel in Italy because these are the blue roads of Italy, the small roads. Uh, and when I happened to be upon this valley, I I was taken by it very much, to the point that I found a small house there, and it was a ruin with a fig tree growing in the middle of the broken up walls, and I felt something. I felt I wanted to be there, and I was trying to. I'd never been in the country before in any active way, meaning farming, but I really felt I wanted to do that, and so I was scratching around and fixing, the little parts around the house, and then I started mending the house, and if we just go a year later, there I am, really with a functioning house in which I'm living all alone, very happily in this huge place, empty, and very cold in the winter, very hot in the summer, very extreme. And this was in 1991. So it was a very poetic adventure for someone who'd always been exposed to the bright lights of cities. And here I was in the long, then the long rhythms of day and night, and harsh temperatures, and very, very impressive. And I wondered what I should do in order to stay there because I was feeling so concentrated, and so uplifted that I decided I wanted to do something that would keep me staying there. So what I did was I went to Bordeaux, where was lucky enough to have some friends with their own chateaus, and they hosted me, and they were very generous, and they told me everything they knew. And this took a couple of years. In the meantime, I was going back and forth, fixing the surroundings of my little house. And then I started planting as soon as I had learned something enough to do that. And I planted those Bordeaux varietals, and with the team of French people that came year after year until I had plenty of acreage planted, and I was looking, and I was uninterruptedly busying myself with the vineyards because I couldn't resist being. It wasn't the vineyards themselves; it was the general place in way away from the metropolitan kind of life that we are all used to. And it was so impressive to me that I just couldn't stay away, and I felt I had enough time, plenty of time to do everything and to learn about the viticulture first, and then after a few years, when the first grapes started hanging from the plants, then the winemaking, and I very quickly built a small winery, and I started making wine, making mistakes. But I had my Bordeaux friends on the phone, and they helped me. And this started a life of viticulture and winemaking, which was really an excuse for being in a place like that, which was so fulfilling. I got convinced later that that we have a double life, in the sense that there's a stream or river-like spirit that runs parallel to the life we know, which it keeps us company, and it's always ready to emerge, and it's a poetic kind of stream. And when you are in a place that is inspiring, that sort of water comes higher, and and you get you are able to see this great this great um, this poetical current which accompanies you in life, and I was exposed to it, and I felt very exhilarated and very and very happy and everything. And also it was a muscular experience, because I was, cutting wood, making clearances, everything that happens to you when you take to the country, which is something that uh, I know happens a lot in England too. I mean, this it's something that we all know about. And but for me, it was a huge experience. And what I did try to do with my wine, which is a red wine in Tuscany, was to represent, or at least suggest, the feeling of overwhelming richness that I had from being in the place where those vineyards are. And slowly I became good at it, and it wasn't experimental anymore, and it became something which I uh, which I knew how to do, because I was always working very much hands-on, and I learned so well that that after 30 years, which is now, I am pretty much the master of what I'm doing. After that, after some years, I also ventured to Sicily and went up on Mount Etna. I was looking for a cold place where you could cultivate some high quality grapes, being that Sicily is so hot, and it's hard to make good wine in very hot weather. And then on Mount Etna, I found that sort of um, of environment, and it was completely abandoned. And I bought a old collapsed winery with lots of acreage, which was all full of it had been abandoned about 60 years earlier. So it was in a mess, but slowly we, me and two or three people who were hired there, we cleaned all the terraces, and we started making wine there too. And it was a completely different kind of wine, which you have with you. And it's the one with the paler red and the white. Those two come from Mount Etna. So it's not clear to me if you are sipping that wine right now or not. Yes, you are. So if you start with the white one, it's a Chardonnay, but it's picked just before it develops its Chardonnay features, and it's still narrow and skinny and mineral, so that it has uh, all the character, the rough character of the volcanic soil of Mount Etna, which is always erupting. It's a huge volcano, and it's planted on the north side, so it's very cold in the evening when the cold air starts sliding down the mountain from the top, which is eternally uh, ice covered, and so the nights are cold, and even in August you have very cold nights, and then as soon as you get into October, it's it gets seriously cold, and it's very exciting because there's this volcano which is almost always erupting, and the sea is right around the corner, and the altitudes are impressive, and the mountain ranges around it are silvery and orange according to the time of day. It's another of those places in Italy that are totally not ruined by buildings or by too many people. And that place also did inspire me very much. And so you have three wines. Two of them are from this tall and a little frightening mountain, and the other one comes from this valley I was telling you about. And I think I was lucky, very lucky, because the poetic life that we live in a secret way was able to emerge in my later years because of these places I went to, and the wines I made there were dedicated to that feeling, consciously and non-consciously, because I really thought about this later on. So that is the story.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Could you please start sending any questions you may have for Andrea through the chat? And I wanted to kick off just asking you probably a boring question, whether there is a wine or a particular kind of wine that you, apart from yours, that you absolutely adore and love above anyone else.
There's a wine in Bordeaux, which is not even the first wine, but it's the second wine of a chateau called, which is very well known, which is called Cheval Blanc. And the second wine is called Le Petit Cheval, and I've always felt that was a pearl of a wine. And another one is there's a wine they make in northern Italy, which is called Monfortino, and it's a Barolo. It's become a very expensive wine, but sometimes it has that magic that makes a wine something further than just good.
Thank you. I just got a couple of questions that are coming through. The first one is a comment from Heather Dix. I love the analogy of the stream of energy flowing in parallel with our daily existence. Which wine in our three represents that essence, do you think? Which one of the three, Le Cupole or the two from Etna, which one encapsulate most the kind of epiphany that you experienced when you
I think that would be Le Cupole. While the other two are really more expressions of that place, Mount Etna, while Le Cupole is more an expression of me.
Okay, fantastic. And Friar Douglas Moffat is asking, which cupolas are the inspiration of the name of the Tuscan wine?
Which
domes, which cupolas?
Okay. Well, there are several little domes besides the hills that spread the way when in the landscape when you take a look at it. But there are also little domes that I have built there, from smaller to larger. Some are attached to the old buildings that I restored there. So there's many, the domes sort of keep coming up in that place. And for that reason, I call it the domes.
Okay. Another question for me. I wanted to ask you, I was intrigued by the fact that you went for sort of you went for French wines rather than Italian wines. Is that a conscious, do you think that, you know, that French wines are superior after all to the Italians, or is there any other reason?
Those are, let me try and answer that as if it were two questions. If French wines are superior to Italian wines, I hate Gelasio sitting next to me, but I consider French wines better than Italian wines. But that's besides the point. The reason I planted those varietals, which were planted in France so many centuries ago, but have also been present here and there in northern Italy and even in Tuscany. In the large estates that the aristocracy had in Tuscany, you will find some Cabernet Sauvignon and some Cabernet. Well, there wasn't even that distinction back then. It was just Cabernet, and they are because these people had relations, maybe with owners in Bordeaux, who maybe they had married into families that had ownership of in France. And there are 6 or 7 examples like that in Tuscany alone. Today, by today I mean in the last 30 years, that there's been a huge amount of, or even 40 years, there's been a huge amount of planting Cabernets in Tuscany. I mean, all the well-known wines of I would say really all the well-known, I'm not exaggerating, all the well-known wines of Tuscany are based on Cabernet, let's face it. I mean, the only exception might be Brunello. Everybody's heard of Brunello. Brunello is really an area, it's not a single winery. And there they use straight Sangiovese. And all around me, where I am, everybody does also use straight Sangiovese. So, you know, it's not that the world of Sangiovese has lost the chance to have yet another one because Andrea Franchetti didn't plant it. I mean, there's plenty of Sangiovese and plenty of very good Sangiovese, which is planted there. But I personally, if all of us, of course, if they're going to start making their own wine, they're dreaming that they're going to make the best wine in the world one day. And so did I dream the same. And I thought that the path to that would only be through Cabernet and Merlot.
Thank you. And we have a question from Friar Richard Bernstein. I note the Passo Rosso has a very distinct flavor. Do you know which particular minerals are in abundance in the soil feeding these grapes?
Yes, iron and magnesium especially. It's very, very black lava, and it's very recent lava. It's not a decayed brownish lava. This is really a shiny black kind of soil. So it definitely is very mineral.
Okay, and another question from Friar Azel Wood. Is your wine matured in wood or metal?
In wood.
In wood.
In wood, but not for a very long period of time, and in the large casks. It then goes into cement vats.
Okay, right. So we have also a comment from Friar Douglas Moffat, who said that he's glad that this is recorded. Finally, I have an Italian on record speaking la verità about French versus Italian wines. So, e anche la cucina, he's asking. Penso di no. And that also leads me to my other question. Are these wines, do these wines go particularly well with a particular kind of food?
I I think the Sicilian wines go well with the more fatty foods, especially that red, which is it's a low pH red. It's acidic and mineral, as people like to say, but I think it goes very well with things like tripe or things that you need to wash your mouth from.
I don't think you find tripe in London. Maybe in Rome, but not in London. Yeah.
Okay, well, actually, there is a place that serves tripe in London. It's called the Salt Yard or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, mm, fatty foods are, there are other kinds too, like
Yeah. I was joking.
But also, but yes, well, the Tuscan wine I think goes well with a wider range of foods, like all sorts of poultry and venison and anything which has with sauces, cheeses. I mean, it's a
Cinghiale.
Wild boar.
Wild boar.
Wild boar is really not all that dark a meat. It's really more like a veal. So even though the word wild boar is more impressive.
We've got 2 more questions. We have 3 more questions. They keep coming. So we have one of our friars who makes wine in ceramic eggs. So ceramic egg-shaped kind of containers.
Yes.
What do you think about that? Is that a new technique? Have you heard about it?
Well, I think that the first thought that comes to mind is that it's not the vessel in which you put your wine, but it's the wine that counts. So if you put the wine in any clean vessel, if the wine is great, fine. I think ceramic is a great vessel compared to other ones for sure, because of the porosity it has, and because of the total neutrality in the nose. So it has no aromas that it adds to the wine. So I think it's a great way. The problem for someone like me is that I would have to buy many of those eggs, and it would be it would be a lot of work it would be complicated to use so many little eggs. I produce a certain amount of wine, and also I like to play with different kinds of wood every year, and I like to add a little bit of the wood aroma to my wines.
Yeah, another question from Friar Heather Deeks. What was your greatest challenge in getting your beautiful wines to market? And there's also a comment, by the way, Le Coupole is heaven in a glass.
Thank you very much. What was the problem? I don't understand.
The challenge in getting it out to market. I mean, can you buy these wines only directly from your winery, or is it something that you can find in shops in Italy? Or
no, though you can find the wine in shops and in restaurants in pretty much all of Europe, but the challenge I had initially was that I didn't know anybody who distributed wines, and they didn't know me, so I had to find somebody who got interested and enthused and picked up my wine and said, we will be happy to distribute and sell your wine. And that was a British merchant, a merchant from London, who was very encouraging and said, we're very interested and we will take up your wine and we put it right next to our great wines which we represent. And we hope that goes on forever. And it did last 30 years. And those are the first people you meet, and because you're so happy to give them your wine, you know. Then you go very much your own way.
And a question from Freya Zelwood. Do you make grappa, please?
No.
You are too much of a southerner, maybe. And from Freya Douglas Moffat, has Brexit caused any problems with your UK importer?
No, it has not. No.
All right, great. No. And I must admit that I had no problems at all getting your shipment delivered to us. It was just a little delay due to TNT, the courier, but yeah, no particular problems. And Friar Will Dady, like Azel, I wonder whether you also dabble with higher percentages, fortified wine perhaps, such delicious wines. Are you not tempted to do fortified wines or higher percentage?
I never, you mean in alcohol?
Yeah, sort of.
I managed the 15.5, but not more than that. I don't think of fortified wines I like, but I've never made any really.
I mean, I've just made the mistake of tasting Le Cupole, and my head is spinning. And this is a 15. This is a 15 degrees one. Perhaps, if there are no more questions, perhaps while I'm sober, I would like to invite our chairman, Judy Douglas Boyd, to propose the loyal toast.